Welcome to Mount Gretna School of Arts Summer Lecture Series, hosted here in the Pennsylvania Chautauqua's Hall of Philosophy. I'm Jay Noble. I realize I hardly ever say that during this, but I'm the founder and director of Mount Gretna School of Art, and it's our 13th summer here, attracting college through graduate level students from across the country and around the world. In case you don't know about the school, it's a 7-week intensive program. It's all about connecting students with nature and learning how to see. We have a rotation of about 15 instructors and critics that come through so that it's a real pressure cooker, condensed soup type summer experience. And Deirdre Murphy, who's with us here tonight, is our students' first critic to come through. She'll be meeting with them one-on-one for the next 2 days to talk about how they've started up their paintings and drawings and after only 1 week. I want to thank Stinson Strout for his support of the lecture series and Purpose One. Deirdre Murphy is a contemporary visual artist whose work delves into the intricate connections between art and science. With an MFA from the University of Pennsylvania and a BFA from Kansas City Art Institute, Deirdre now serves as the art, architecture, and design faculty at Lehigh University. She attended residencies at Penn State University Shavers Creek Environmental Center, the Winthrop Museum, Hawk Mountain Bird Sanctuary, Powder Mills Nature Reserve, and the Drexel University's Academy of Natural Sciences. Murphy has earned awards from the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts, Percent for the Arts, and the Louis Grant. Her artwork is represented by Chimera Gallery in Philadelphia and Susan Gold Gallery in Bryn Mawr. She currently has works on view in a group exhibition, Laudato Si, Caring for Our Common Home at St. Joseph's University through August 10th. And so thank you for coming, Deirdre.
Thanks for having me. All right, so thank you everybody for coming out on this soggy gully washer of a night. And thank you to Jay and incredible faculty and staff and students for being here. I think this is my second time, once on Zoom during COVID, and then I came out just for a day a number of years ago. So this is really exciting to be able to spend more time together. So I thought I'd just kind of show you a little bit about where I was at your point in life and then like zoom forward. So so I grew up all over. My dad's a scientist, hematologist, oncologist, so blood cancer doctor. My mom, Irish English literature. So grew up in definitely an academic family, and like museums were and still are the cathedral to me. So grew up seeing amazing paintings and decided, all right, I'm going to go to the Kansas City Art Institute, study with Wilbur Newald. And so Cezanne was definitely kind of the demigod on my altar there. And, you know, much like Barbara Grossman, who it's just amazing that we're here together tonight. Amazing. My professor, my mentor on my my teacher altar. But so Wilbur Newald, you worked on a painting for 3 months. That was it. Rain or shine, you just reworked it. And he was just a phenomenal professor. So just showing you some of my earlier influences, right? So this was undergrad at the Kansas City Art Institute, painting and printmaking. Then like in my senior year, I like set up, like Matissean kind of installations and would paint from those. The color is horrible because this is like 1998, like whatever. I couldn't figure out how to get the slides to unyellow, sorry. Still to this day, Matisse is one of, my all-time influences. So lots of figurative work, right? Influenced, greatly. And then after undergrad, I then moved to Portland, Oregon, and I worked for Gamblin Artist Colors. I worked for Robert Gamblin, and I basically did my post-bac with him. I started out as a shipper, and they didn't want to hire me because I'm small, and they didn't think I could lift. And I was like, listen, I am one of 5 Irish. Come on, I can do this, because I wanted the discount on the paint. And before that, like I just the only way I could continue to paint and feed myself was working in restaurants, because I could work 4 10-hour shifts and then I'd have 3 studio days in a row. That was the only way I could do it. And so then when I worked for Gamblin, I worked 4 10-hour shifts and I got a big discount on paint. And then I was able to plein air paint in Oregon, and, you know, always going to the museums, you know, always looking at art, but it was still like very much in Oregon, like plein air painting. Fast forward now to UPenn. So lucky to have studied with Barbara Grossman. You know, her work ethic, you guys know, you're so privileged. This is so phenomenal that you're able to study with Barbara. So work ethic, like you just show up, you do the work, even if you don't feel inspired, it doesn't matter. Like work makes the work. And that was just like, I wouldn't have gone to UPenn if it was not for Barbara Grossman. Because I remember I was like sitting on the step outside the Morgan building and you were like, hey, I saw you like touring, and you totally convinced me, yes, this is where you should be. And like, it was because of meeting Barbara as, you know, an admissions touring student that, so, and to this day, like, it's that work ethic. So at UPenn, of course, like my work changed dramatically, but still nature being at its core. But then I started to open up to the idea of incorporating the sciences. So fast forward from grad school then to where I'm at now. So I like to kind of frame it like that I have a research-driven practice. So I do residencies studying mainly with scientists, environmental scientists, ornithologists, climate change scientists. And then from that research, develop the paintings. But, you know, it leads me to wonderful places like, you know, to go to do falconry. This was actually at Hershey Park, really close to here, bird banding with different groups to find out, you know, how the birds are faring with climate change, which we're seeing with our extreme weather. So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about what my studio practice is like. So, you know, again, it's still driven by observation, right? So the magnolias in that painting are from a park in my neighborhood. I went out there with my French easel that my parents gave me when I graduated from undergrad in Kansas City Art Institute. I still have the same French easel. And I went out to my park and I painted, right? I did a little painting study. And then there were goldfinch, right? And so I couldn't, you know, paint them strictly from observation because they flitted about. But I did a number of, you know, quick little painting studies. The big slashes in the paintings or those colorful lines. My daughter was really young at the time. She took my iPhone and she would draw on it, like at a lecture or at a museum whenever she was bored, right? And I was like, those are really beautiful drawings she's doing. And so they wound up in the painting, and there's like Mardi Gras beads. That's actually the Atlantic Flyway. So down at the base of the painting would be Mexico, where the beads come in and pinch. That's Cape May. Where they kind of loop and go to the left, that would be going into the Midwest and then up to the boreal forest in Canada. So that's the flyway line. And it came from, you know, the data set on the left. So how do scientists use visual imagery? How do they communicate? It's not too dissimilar to how we visual artists create work. We both are solitary in our studio or in the lab. We're using our keen sense of observation and we're asking questions that we don't know the answers to. So that's how I've kind of aligned with scientists. But naturalists is kind of like more my jam. So like looking at Audubon for sure, right? That's like a no-brainer. And then, you know, looking at like, how can I interpret a flocking pattern? So the painting, you know, all those triangles, they could be symbolizing movement. They could be symbolizing individual birds. So just trying to use abstraction and representation. I go to like Drexel Academy of Natural Science and just ask and they'll let you in. Like they let me go in the back room and draw. There was a woman studying lice and I was like, okay, you study that over there. I'm going to be drawing this, snowy owl wing here. But like, you'll be surprised if you just ask. Scientists are very happy to share. So I taught at UPenn for adjuncting for 20 years and at PAFA, and then moved to Lehigh, like Jay said. And so I've been there 6 years, and teaching at a smaller university, also a research university, has been fantastic because I've been able to work with other scientists. Like neuroscience is not something that I was very familiar with, but I was asked to co-teach with this brilliant scientist, Dr. Jennifer Swan. And so I got really interested in Ramon y Cajal, and how his beautiful drawings of neurons, they look like nests to me. And I was, doing these little observational paintings of nests. And then that all kind of came together where I was like, wow, these are like the nests I was doing during COVID, because it was like the sticks are only held together with tension. And that's what it felt like during COVID. So there was a lot of content for me in it, but it was also learning about neuroscience that was just so fascinating. Because bird migration, I felt like not exhausted, but I just needed to, expand my research and my area of interest. So that's where it went into these nesting structures. So that's what, working with neuroscience led to that, which was so fantastic for me because it kept me super humble and learning. Sometimes I can't like work from observation. And so I'll like the black and white photo, that's just a webcam. So I'll watch a video sometimes of birds building their nests. This one was of a mother owl coming to feed her owlet. And I have 2 kids, my 21-year-old son. I can never keep enough protein in the house. I'm like, dude, I just bought a pack of hot dogs. Like, where did it go? And that's what watching this video was like to me, because like the mother would come in, she'd give him a mouse and he'd gobble it up. And then he'd be like, I need more. And then off she went again. But like, I will like, sometimes it's like, I'm on a loop, right? Where I'm like watching these videos so I can still be informed by nature, but, I don't have nocturnal vision, so I can't get out in the forest. But each of the paintings, I definitely build in some sort of color theory or a color problem really to solve. And so this is kind of the, where I'm at right now. I moved from the nest structures, which were kind of neuron inspired, and COVID inspired, right? So that was like 2020 to like 2021. And then in 2022, doing that Shavers Creek residency that Jay talked about, I, again, plein air painted. I went on site and I just brought these little panels and I painted in the environment, hiking around, and I found those portals, woodpecker holes. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is the next thing that I want to paint and investigate, is these framing device of the portal of the woodpecker, the owl hole came from. And so then I did a series, like this painting is 48 by 36 inches. And so I tried painting, the small studies are all in, the natural palette. But then when I tried to do that painting, but, like 5 foot, 6 foot, it just didn't hold for me. And I didn't feel like I was growing my own color story knowledge. And so that's where I was like, well, what do I want it to evoke? And so I took I took palette choice from within the vignette and then brought that out into what would be the tree bark, so that it had more. I was thinking about James Turrell and that atmospheric kind of, where are you? Are you in it? Are you out of it? That push and pull of the phenomenology of seeing. So that's how like this kind of color problem came about, was like, how can I make the inside feel like the outside and vice versa? So this is just kind of like what it's like for me, like out in the trail. And I brought the same little kit with me here too. Yeah, so this is just kind of showing you how I move from plein air to studio paintings. And sometimes, I just goof around and I gotta paint a bird every once in a while, just cause. This was one of the scientists at Shavers Creek. He literally has those night vision goggles. And I thought that was so cool. And so he sent me pictures of this fox he was following. So I was like, can I paint that, please? But you know, again, like looking back at like Sir Isaac Newton and all that, it's like those scientists really helped us artists, right? And then we artists in turn really helped the scientists. So it's, I think, this wonderful symbiotic. In addition to painting, I print. So this is working, I have this series of sculptures that I do with my husband, Scott White, that are these sky domes. So this kind of idea of the celestial. So, you know, this is just like making little relief prints and then shinkolaying them, just kind of like playing, you know. So I use printmaking as a way to kind of open myself up to new ways of seeing, because it, you know, we prints in reverse, right? The image is in reverse. So this is actually the Nests series, really printing wise, started with Carrie Patterson and a residency at St. Mary's in 2021. So I was just starting that neuron work, and that's where it was just so invigorating to be able to, like, you know, find a nest that's blown down in a storm like tonight, right? And then it's just on the ground. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm not destroying somebody's home because I'm just going to pick it up, right? And then dry it off and run it through the press and then run it through again and run it through again. So this series of prints then showed at the Winterthur Museum, which is an American decorative museum. It's incredible. Highly recommend DuPont Estate. It's just like incredible artwork everywhere. But so I did a residency with them studying Audubon. So now what am I up to? So nature is still present. The birds are still content in here, but instead of painting literally about the birds or about the bird nests, I'm printing about the native pollinators that then help the ecosystem. So thinking about it from a climate change perspective, if we rip up our grass and we plant native plants to our area, so these are PA natives, we're going to help heal the planet just that little bit, right? And if we all do that part, I do think we can start to really help and heal our planet. So research-wise, I'm studying herbariums. Content-wise, it fits into the whole avian climate change interest that I have. So at Lehigh, they have the Tremblay Herbarium. There's herbariums everywhere. They're just these libraries of dead plants. So it's just a paper garden smashed up, right? But I love to see how scientists use the white botanical tape, because I think, again, that's like a really cool line drawing that they do. And that it's just, you know, maybe it's just necessity of, oh, I got to smash this leaf here, hold it down here. But those choices, those are visual choices. And if we pay attention to our visual choices, then that leads us to the next discovery, right? So I then took cues from these scientists, from their native pollinator plant specimens. I made my own botanical tape with Gompi paper, like shinkolate it. And so that's, I have this series going now of these contemporary herbariums, this paper garden. I grow all the species myself. I cut them, I press them, I monoprint them. So it's definitely like a full circle. So this was at Chimera Gallery in Philly. Chimera specializes in art and science. But I mean, it's a contemporary gallery, but they definitely have an affinity for that. So in addition to painting and printmaking, public art, every once in a while, I'll do that. And so Washington College in Chestertown, Maryland, their environmental science program had a call that I entered, and they wanted some sort of sculpture and some sort of painting for their new bird banding station and their environmental science program. So I did a residency. I went out once in the spring and once in the fall, and I bird banded with them. I, you know, learned, interviewed the scientists, just shadowed them in the forests and in the labs and everything. And they wanted me to make some work. They wanted a bench. And I was like, well, I want to do a bird blind. I wanted to do like a sculpture that you can kind of like feel like cozy and hide in, and you could look at the birds and not be seen. And they wanted a bench. And I was like, all right, well, let's just turn the bird blind around, put some Easter cedar in it, and we're both going to be happy. And so I just installed this 2 weeks ago. And so it's the Caspian tern and the least tern. These are long distance migrants. They fly 20,000 miles a year. And those little birds go pole to pole right up through Maryland. And I was like, no way, that's so cool. So that's how I chose, or they chose those birds. It's in core 10. The little dashes and dots, those are taken from the flyway maps from their migratory paths. And then up underneath the roof, don't have a good shot. I've got to get back and actually do a photo shoot, but there's the constellations that the birds migrate to. This is another sculpture. This was in Dublin, California. And then this one is a temple. So both of these, like, they deal, again, bird migration. This one is the constellations that the birds fly to. So birds don't have a GPS like we do in a car and a phone. It's in their heads. And so most songbirds migrate at night, so nocturnally. So they use the stars as their GPS, Cassiopeia, Polaris, Big Dipper, Little Dipper. So the birds see those constellations and they know their route. So, and they also are wicked smart that they know that hawks, night hawks are the only ones that are going to get them at night. But so all the day hawks, the day raptors, they won't pick them off. So songbirds travel at night, Milky Way with the constellations, where you have a moonless night typically. So these are some of the, inspos from looking at migration and the constellations. And this is some of the, sometimes it comes from like seeing the solar eclipse, like that was phenomenal, right? For anybody that saw that, that's like life-changing. And then it winds up in the sculptures. So again, all of these sculptures are made with Scott because he is the sculptor. I'm a painter. And then that's what the sculpture looks like in Cali. And there it is on the site. So sometimes, they're with these really big apartments and sometimes they're in a park. This is installation at the airport. Like, so how do I get the paintings out there in the world if it's not in the gallery? Doing a call like this, because I was like, well, human migration, whether we're going to work or visit family, and then bird migration, like looking for sites that take the work out of a museum or gallery to, reach a broader audience. Murals also, these are mainly done with students, whether it's like students at my, institutions or elsewhere. So this was at Dickinson. And I worked with their environmental science. This was looking at their data of like the birds in there. This is Carlisle, PA, if anybody is from Carlisle area and knows the Susquehanna. So that's what the mural looks like. So it's like, there's the watershed of the Susquehanna, the Conneauguinett River and the Susquehanna. It's got their bird census count in there, and the breeding and feeding. And so how to I don't data visualize because I definitely take liberties to make design decisions, but it is data informed. And then different kind of murals. This was done with, I did a short stint. I always taught high school during the summer, but this was a year that I taught high school full time. And so I had my students help me in this, just doing local songbirds. So when I'm not doing murals in public art, again, exhibiting is, I try and it takes me a couple years probably to get a show with teaching full time, to get a show made. But this is just kind of like the students. You guys definitely are so inspirational. So it's always great to work with students on the exhibits. And so this is just kind of a shot. And I try to that's some of the tree little chunks that I find in the woods and things like that. So this is not it's a notch in a tree, but it looked a lot like one of those woodpecker holes. And I just painted it to look like the paintings. So this was just in the fall. I tried my hand at a little bit of sculpture. I'm not a sculptor, like I said, so I think of these as more like, I don't know, like sculptural musings. I took the bird nests, I painted them with slip, and then I fired them, and then I airbrushed them in the same palette as the painting. So I did this like ombre hue. I got a ways to go with them, but so then that's kind of like where I'm at with the exhibitions. With the residencies, sometimes like I talked about, I'll work mainly with ornithologists, but this one was and actually a molecular lab. So this one again stretched me. But I said yes to it because I was like, well, I have so much to learn. These scientists were studying Ebola and dengue virus. And then right as I finished the work from this residency, like COVID dropped. And then they were working on the COVID vaccine. So it was just pretty phenomenal that I was like looking at bird migration and viral migration. And then I'm like, wow, okay, like it actually really is like very, very apropos and meaningful. So sometimes these residencies really surprise me in very informative ways. Right now through Lehigh, I'm able to use their electron microscopy lab to look at pollen. So abstract shapes are just like any other shape, right? Like the difference between abstraction and representation, I don't think that there's such a big difference. It's just like how we label things, but like this is like this beautiful abstract form, but it's actually pollen. It really does exist. It really does look like this wild and weird kind of, Terry Winter's form. And so being able to do drawings from the electron microscope is just amazing. This is where my studio is now. So I'm working with Lower Merion Conservancy. They're a natural lands, a stewardship .org. They do really awesome work around Philly, taking like, feral lands or lands that are brownfields and restoring with their like riparian boundaries. So creeks that are, just insanely polluted, they'll work at restoring those. So they do great work. And they do a lot of all pollinator planting. So I've learned all the pollinator stuff from them. And so I had volunteered with them in the past, and this cottage, it used to be their headquarters. They've actually moved into the old Barnes Foundation. And so nobody was there. And I said, hey, how about if I go and I'll work from these beautiful, this beautiful landscape. There's me like schlepping out the back door, literally on the grounds, like plein air painting in there, like on the trail at the cottage. And then I help to visualize their mission in other ways, like during the year, like once a quarter, I do a give back to them. And it's just been remarkable because all the migratory birds are coming in and out. The seasons are changing. I can hike in the woods and, paint on location. This is the studio. Like it's just these 3 little offices. It's not great light. The heat and AC work sometimes. The power goes out a lot like here. There's no Wi-Fi, but I don't care. It's like I have a place to work. Because I've worked in broom closets, literally in like the janitors move the brooms out and they let me work in a broom closet. I've worked in basements. I've worked in garages with no windows and no heat. Like we just make do, right? We work wherever we can. So this is like glorious. I thought I'd show you something that's like not my usual. I like to collaborate, not only with scientists, but with other artists. And I love the way sculptors draw. So Yvonne Love, actually a UPenn MFA, and she's the chair at Penn State Abington, right outside Philly. And so her dad is a naturalist. Her father is in his early 90s. And every day for the past like 50 years, he has done a checklist. He goes out and he does a bird count with his wife. And he has like every year this massive 365 pages, these books where he goes out and meticulously records. And so Yvonne wanted to do an homage to her father and was like, hey, you deal with bird migration and all this. Would you want to collaborate? And I was like, sure. She's like, well, what are our rules? I'm like, no rules. Let's like no rules. The only thing is that we have to work off of the checklist. So she took the checklist and then, enlarged it on, I think it's like a half sheet of BFK. And so then, we just go back and forth, back and forth. So I've had them for 2 weeks, shipped them to her. She had them for 2 weeks, and we're going back and forth with these. And it's really cool. Like, she's cutting into the paper and then I'm printing and backing it, or, I gave her that woodpecker one, and then she went in and she's cut into it. Like, she just delivered it to me yesterday, and it's so cool, like what she's done. And I was like, yeah, chop into it, like eradicate it. I don't care. Like, just like, let's be curious and humble, and like, let our egos go and see what we can come up with. And so these will be shown at the John James Audubon home, which is so cool because he's such an influence of mine and hers, and it's wonderful for her father. So it's in Millgrove, like it's right outside Philly, but there's a museum there, and then his original home. So they'll be, I think, I don't know, between 12 and 20. We'll see how many dogs there are, how many survive. But yeah, so that'll be in the spring. We'll show those. And it's just going to be this cool collaborative. Teaching is, dual career, right? I think that, as much as you put your egos out, you leave them at the door and you come into studio and you just sponge it up and you work so hard, like that ethos I really carry with me. And I think that it's just this wonderful symbiotic relationship of, the teacher learning from the students. So Bruce Mao, I saw his design show at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and I thought it was a great manifesto. So I've definitely put his link there as well. But I love that, like, don't be cool, right? Think without your mind, right? Like, just work so hard, you forget yourself, right? Take field trips. You guys do that a lot, right? Museums and galleries and just a walk in the woods. So this whole idea of just like really, becoming the child again, where the possibilities abound. And I think, teaching that profession allows me, to really have the great privilege of working with brilliant students like yourself. So what's next? So the last show I had, that dancer Lyra Butler Denham, she's an amazing performance artist. And at my solo show in the fall, she came for a week-long residence, she and her dance partner, and they choreographed this incredible performance. So the closing of the show was this climate change, like bird migration performance. So that's kind of, I'm hoping to continue working with dancers, with performance artists. So this show, Laudato Si, that's up right now at the Old Barnes Foundation, which is the McGuire Art Museum that Jay mentioned. So it's really cool working with St. Joe University students. They help to curate the show, their museum studies program. And it's a really beautiful idea of like caring for our common home, and it comes from the papal encyclical from our late Pope. And so that's pretty cool. And there's a lot of other artists in that show. So on my website, I just try and keep this up, but I don't do such a great job. I like put stuff on Instagram, and that's about it. So that's like, you'll be able to see what I'm up to with my residencies and things like that. And then mainly, like, I didn't show you a lot of work from the past, but I just kind of archive it here. So this is like, way back to like right after grad school days. And then I just kind of have them organized, chronologically, but there's plein air painting pretty much in every body of work that I do. There'll be some sort of, this is like, studying the stars at night in prints. But everything, like studying from nature, has always been that common thread in the work. So you guys can, wander through and look that way if you want to see like a big throwback of work. But I didn't want to like bore you with the years and years. Yeah. Questions, you guys?
Is that loud? They're playing like an acid. I don't think it'll be loud. Just be normal. Well, on that topic, what's your most absurd outdoor painting?
Yeah, oh man. I mean, living in Oregon, definitely like backpacking and bringing little painting set skiers out there. That was crazy. Having to like get in a high windstorm, like putting boulders in the easel to keep it from pitching and flying away. Like that was pretty crazy. Because like literally had to weight the easel down so it didn't fly away. Um, yeah, I think maybe that's one of the strangest, or like, painting like at this river that I didn't realize was a nudist colony. And I was like, oh, look at a lot of like bathers. That's fantastic. So it seems like in all the paintings, you're like super interested in making things very volumetric and rendered, but also flat at the same time. And I'm wondering how you decide this. How do you decide when it becomes too rendered, too versus too flat? Oh, that's always my battle. Yeah. I think I've tried to figure out like where that like near far flat volumetric love came from. And I think it was from like I had a gap year. I lived in Japan when I was 17. So I graduated high school a little early. I'm one of 5 kids. We were overseas. Can you imagine like, my mom with 5 little ones? So I wanted to go to school early. My dad fudged my birth certificate so I could go, get 2 or 3 of them out of the house. So when I came back to the States, I was a little ahead of the game. So I then took a gap year, went to Japan, and I think the Japanese prints and the Asian aesthetic of that, like the flattening of space and then the deep space, especially in like the ukiyo-e prints, like that still has such a profound effect on me. Just that being able to like see simultaneously that depth and then that flatness of I'm still a picture, but I'm not, and so I think that's where this like perpetual love of that idea comes from. But I'm always battling, like I even putting those paintings, the gradients of growth paintings up on screen. I'm like, oh, like I want to go back into so many of those, and I got too tight. I want to open it up and allow it to be more gestural. And so I feel like that's always my battle. And Barbara, you probably remember being in studio, like hammering the same thing. And I'm like, damn it, I'm still learning the same lesson. Right? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And so that portal has been like something that I keep coming back to as a way to do that near far. And if my eye gets stuck, the composition gets stuck and bogged down, then that's when I know like, oh, I've got to like destroy that, like get away from the rendered in order to like open up the painting again. Yeah, it's a tough lesson.
For me, like producing model painting is really tied to my painting. And I was wondering if for you there.
Yeah, it does. So a lot of times it's kind of like, toddlers, they're parallel playing, like they don't play nice together, but they do teach each other. So sometimes like right now with the contemporary herbarium, that like is not showing up in my paintings yet. But I feel like printmaking for me is always a little bit ahead of, or teaches me these really interesting lessons that I'm just not aware of, or I don't know is happening. And so I always like to keep those two in tandem. And I don't know if it's because it's such a process-driven medium, because it's in reverse, like it's somehow or another, it just opens up. And then sometimes they will cross paths. But I try and not overly orchestrate it, so the work can teach me that I'm not, because I tend to be, like I can like overly try and control and think, oh, I've got to make a body of work that's like this, and for a show that's here, then, and printmaking it keeps me humble, but it shows up. And then the paintings do, like now I see the mono prints, and I was like, oh, I need to go back into those, but I'm thinking like, oh, should I go back into those now with more printmaking, or maybe should I paint into them. Is that okay? Like, can I break my rules there? Yeah, yeah. So typically they're parallel paths, but they always inform each other, and sometimes they'll actually cross. Hi.
Thank you for your talk, first of all. I was just wondering, so at the beginning you showed, Saison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, I'm like an omnivore, so I just kind of ingest it all and try and see as much work as I can, you know. I think like going to see Cecily Brown's show at the Barns, that was amazing to see like how slippery and sensuous her strokes are, and you know how, you know, she still, you know, nods to our history. And that was like, oh, that was just, and the scale of her work was really impressive. And then before that, the Mickalene Thomas show, that like how she would collage in, like, so I definitely am really inspired by and just keep like trying to have conversations with contemporary artists for sure. But then, I mean, Bernard, my God, like he still makes my knees weak, you know, and I still think about him, like definitely with certain paintings, I'm like, okay, like looking back, you know, in my library, and, you know, it was so cool to like check in today and see the Barnes Foundation book waiting for me. And I was like, oh yes, you know, there's the Matisse with the fishbowl. And like, you know, it was like, yeah, I'm still like, it still gives me goosebumps to see those paintings. And I definitely like, I always have to like pay homage, right? And just go visit. So absolutely, those painters from early on are still so pivotal. I mean, I grew up with, I know it was like, you know, a post Albrecht Dürer, not an original, but like, you know, just one of his little rabbit etchings, you know, and so that's like still, you know, just like this delightfully amazing print that like I just was like in the hallway of my parents' house, you know what I mean? A copy. But so yes, I think those, yeah, I like to kind of think about like taking history and that it's just like this great mashup, like, you know, kind of like making a mixtape in my mind of like all my studio loves, you know. Does that make sense? Yeah, absolutely. God.
Are you a spontaneous artist, or are you more like a planned artist? Just talk about your, I guess,
Yeah.
application.
Well, so truth be told, I'm a mom, you know, so like I don't have the luxury really of like having unscheduled life, but I dream of that, you know, that maybe in 3 years, my daughter's 3 more years of high school, but being a mom is the great privilege of my life too, so I can't complain. But so the like like summer is awesome when you know, ever since teaching at Lehigh, I have not had to teach over the summers, which is just delightful. So it's amazing being able to show up to studio 5 days a week, and like how that continuity happens and like how you can really get the work. So what do I do? Okay, so I, you know, because I have these other responsibilities, right? I like to, if I can get to studio by 9 o'clock, you know, get everybody's lunch and out the door, right? And then I get myself to studio. And then I do have rules for myself. Like I put on my studio uniform, my apron and my studio shoes, whatever. So that's like my uniform. I don't know, I have to, like, it just is like, that's my gear, right? And it gets me in the mindset of like, get to work. And then like, I'll let myself check my email in the beginning of the day, but like, I can't check email, like I can't get on my phone on the computer until like a lunch break, right? And then, so I really force myself to not be distracted, basically, right? Because it's so easy to in this distracted world that we live in. Unless I'm like sourcing material, right? And I'm like, oh, we gotta find this bird. Okay, there it is. Okay, great, there, yeah. Because it's not flying out the window or whatever. So I mean, I do like that kind of thing. And then, you know, also just balance too, where at the end of the painting session, usually I have to end at like 3 or 4 to go pick up my kiddo. And then I try and like go for, even if it's just like a 20-minute hike, something where I just like wash my eyes, refresh my brain. Like it doesn't have to all be like, I come from a very like work ethic family, which is really awesome, very ambitious. but like you have to have balance, right? And so like, just moving, because standing in studio, you're like, your knees are buckling and not for a good reason, right? So, but that's like, if I like could do that, and then, have access to like printing facilities and painting, great. Go to see shows, go to museums, like definitely I think that having at least 4 days, like for me, that's just sweet, because then like I actually can get into a deeper conversation, and the work can actually, the paintings can then have a life of their own, and they can teach me that I don't feel like I'm in control. If I'm teaching 4 days and I'm only in studio 1 day a week, I feel like I have this agenda and I have to do this and I've got, and then like I'm there, like my ego, my mentality, and then the paintings are just dry and more illustrative, and they're not like felt, So like you have to get into that sweet spot groove. And for me, it's just like having that kind of time. It's tougher during the school year. If I can't do that, then like just having my sketchbook with me, and even if it's like a vitamin D, you pop a little drawing, like, just doing a little drawing, just a little something, right? So just showing up however you can, and not beating yourself up too bad if you can't get to studio that much, because there's all kinds of reasons why, but just showing up in whatever form. Yeah.
Just briefly said something about controlling the painting process. Can we talk about your relationship?
If I know, that's a really good question. If I have like a sketch or gouache or some sort of study where I think I know like what the painting is going to look like in the end, that's when I know I'm in trouble, So I try and leave things open. If I, feel like, okay, I have it composed, I know I want it to have these elements in it, and I feel like it's kind of like I'm starting to like put a pillow over it and suffocate it, then I flip it upside down, or, I put, do the old, like get a stick and put the, an oil stick on the end of it, or charcoal or whatever. And I like, do the old Matisse and draw with the stick thing. I do things that, draw with my non-dominant hand, whatever, to try and like mess it up. So if I'm too present and too much in control, you know what that's like, right? When you're like, like like the investigation and the joy isn't there, and the joy can be painful too. I mean, tough decisions, right? So it's not all happy making by far, no way. But yeah, when you just feel like you're not quite present, then I have to mess it up.
He says, speaking of the intricacy between art and other subjects, especially along with those that deal with reasoning, rational part of your intelligence.
Okay, yeah. So scale shift is a big one. Like taking, whether it's like Julie Moretti with her, kind of the shapes, those kite-like shapes that she uses. So thinking about like when the scientists use those dots and dashes, or, whatever it is that I'm, kind of that analytical, rational mindset looking at, a scale shift helps a lot. Like if I would, take something really small, minutia, and blow it up large or invert it, or so, because I don't know, like there's the rational, analytical knowledge and intuitive knowledge, which I think are both equally so important, but like I don't always want to be so like binary about that. Like I think that they kind of morph and shift. So playing with intention, which tends to be more like intuition bound, but flipping the system on its head is usually how I can then open it up to enter into it, for the possibility of it to be in the work. And edit at the end of the day. You guys are awesome. You got to be so tired though. You worked so hard.
Thanks. But anyway, everybody clap.